So the next segment here is an interview with Jasper Schelling and Suzan Verberne on the topic of online polarization and in online polarization in online media. And basically what we saw earlier is maybe not so middle of the road kind of works around or applications of AI. We wanted to do that to open up everyone's thinking a little bit, and also to start this discussion around inclusivity and the ethical aspects. But we also wanted to have a topic where we would say, well, hey, this is an area where everyone is experiencing AI really on a daily basis, in both good ways and bad ways. So we're going for this whole topic of online media and both the evil and the good roles that AI can play. Obviously, AI is being used in the hunt for clicks, and people are talking about echo chambers and filter bubbles. Maybe we're experiencing that ourselves on YouTube or on Spotify. But the question is also, can we maybe potentially reverse that role of AI? So to discuss that, I have Suzan Verberne here, Associate Professor. Hi, Suzan. And we have Jasper Schelling, and Jasper is an educator
Hello.
at the Rotterdam University of Applied Sciences and also a member of the ACE Foundation. So Jasper, I'm going to start with you. Maybe you can just share a little bit about what ACE is. What is your purpose and mission in life as ACE? And then we'll jump into the topic.
Okay, so ACE is a platform for design, journalism, and in this case, information technology. And basically, what we do is that we create a multidisciplinary space in which we can experiment both with journalists as well as scientists, as well as designers and artists on news in the digital domain. So that's what we do with ACE. And in this case, there's a specific program that I think we'll be talking about today, which is Reverb Channel, which is where we explore the impact of AI and machine learning technologies on digital news.
Yeah, and you guys put like a great movie together, that actually explains the idea of Reverb Channel in a nutshell. So I suggest that we go and have a look at that video. So let's roll the Reverb Channel video now.
Great.
Online media consumption is controlled by algorithms and feedback loops that are an indispensable element for news organizations in their hunt for clicks. These commercially driven metrics are given priority over editorial considerations, and as a result, news channels steadily turn into large echo chambers while their orientation is becoming increasingly unclear. Articles about hotly debated issues such as racism, politics, wealth, and poverty lead to polarized discussions in social media. These result in massive amounts of clicks to the benefit of news organizations. But where does the news value come in? Are these clicks-invoking publications intended to inform, to analyze, or opinionate, or mainly to maximize audience engagement and manipulate social media behavior? In order to explore how polarization, echo chambers, filter bubbles, and the like work in contemporary media culture, we started Reverb Channel, a platform that reverses the role of artificial intelligence. Instead of using AI to optimize clicks and attention, Reverb Channel uses it to uncover framing and bias. Reverb Channel offers data scientists, artists, and media professionals a platform to carry out investigative experiments and share results to evoke debate with the field and the general public. It is based on a continually updated, large corpus of news publications from a wide range of sources covering the last 20 years and provides data, tools, and expertise. By unlocking so-called ideology spaces, Reverb Channel aims to provide more diverse ways to search, discover, and experience the news.
Interesting. So I like it how it first starts with the potential evil role of AI, and then it tries to explore maybe certain ways how we can reverse the role of AI to uncover these ideology spaces. But nothing bad about a little bit of dystopia. So let's maybe start with some of these potential bad effects of AI in online media. The hunt for clicks, echo chambers. I know there's a lot of debate on whether these exist, yes or no, but I think to some degree everyone experiences it as well, for listening to Spotify or watching YouTube videos. So let's explore the dark side for a brief moment here before we switch to the bright side. What is your view on that?
Well, I think when it comes to the dark side, I think the thing is that the most interesting is what we think of as technology, or how we feel or think that these technologies work. So if you take, for example, the filter bubble as an example, a lot of professionals highly contest the existence of it, and I think I think the arguments that they make are very convincing. At the same time, it is a convenient explanation to a large audience, and one of the things that we like to do with the project is also to highlight this tension between, on the one hand, the convenient technologically driven explanation of how this technology works, which is partly also there's some mystification going on there. Yet on the other hand, also showing the limits of actually applying these technologies and showing how the applications of these technologies are not necessarily difficult, but accessible actually to a large group of people. And also here we might also help the general audience also by engaging with it and showing actually what's going on under the hood with these technologies, a way in which they can more easily think of what is actually possible and what sort of separates the sense from nonsense.
Yeah, so let's maybe make that a little bit more tangible. And of course, we all experience sometimes a bit that we get pulled into our filter bubble on Twitter, or or the same old coffee lounge music on your Spotify. Or so what is your? Can you give some specific examples of what you researched? I think you guys you collected a corpus of around 4 million Dutch news articles. And then you invite people, researchers and artists and designers, to kind of look at ways to reverse the role for AI. Can you give me some practical, specific examples of how we could use AI actually to uncover biases, build ideology spaces, or whatever we want to do to counter polarization online media? Can you give me some concrete examples?
Sure. Well, we currently have one researcher working on distinguishing news articles from opinion. So, as part of our data collection, we collected the output of all these various Dutch news websites, and these consist of a combination of different types of articles, different types of news, but also opinion. And we found it interesting to see whether we could actually train an algorithm to distinguish between these two types of articles. And we actually found that this was it was possible to do quite well, to also distinguish quite clearly. And that's one of those examples where we can actually show how these things work, and also what these kinds of models pick up on as distinguishing between news articles and more opinionated and opinion-based.
And then what would you say? What would be ways how we could then could use such a model? Can you bring it to life? What would be particular use cases of if an AI could tell us whether something is opinion and news, why that is important? You probably have some ideas about that, and maybe you can give us a little bit of a look into the kitchen or into the mind of the document versus news robot here, and what kind of features does it actually use?
Well, if you look at the application side, it might be looking at models and forms of AI that help you to be a bit more critical consumer, or a more critical news consumer. On the other hand, if we go back to the question of, well, what does the model actually pick up? And that I think this is also the part where the mystification sort of, or at least the aura that it has, can lead to trying to think of the word. It's not disillusionment, but it's the interesting thing is that the results from the model gives you a reality check. So, for example, in this case, with the opinion versus news article, we actually found that the models in this case actually picked up words that are referring to sources that really distinguish news articles from opinion. So, according to because of a representative person said A or B, these types of words are actually what the models pick up as distinguishing between news and opinion, and that makes complete sense from a journalistic perspective.
Yeah.
So, but again, this is where where the technology becomes a reality check.
So it's not magic.
No, it's not magic at all, and I think that's also one of the interesting things to explore and also to educate people about.
Yeah, because if you then circle back up again, and so you started your slot with talking where the triangle between AI research, journalism, and designers, right? So I guess you also target the audience could be also the journalists, the designers, or maybe even the general public to show these type of things and to stir debate. So what is the role? How do you see the perfect role for ACE in this within this context? How do you guys complement the lovely work that universities are doing, for example, and also is there a particular way how maybe you want to do a shout out to people that would like to work with you guys?
Well, I think the focus for us is on providing this sort of interdisciplinary space to experiment in, and also to experiment with a space in which creatives and scientists and journalists and information and other professionals can meet and exchange. And
are they open to that?
We are very much open to that. So there's actually
but the journalists and the AI people and the designers, there's a little bit of language barrier then.
Yeah, and I think that's also the on the one hand, that is the interesting thing, that we have to sort of cross in between these different language barriers that are there, and at the same time, it's also about facilitating an environment in which play and discovery can work really well to find these new things.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Jasper. Let's maybe move to Suzan. So Suzan is not only associate professor here at Leiden University in the text mining, she's heading up the text mining group. She's also the woman with one of the coolest Twitter names I've ever seen, namely Suzan. So you were there early to claim that particular name. It's with a Z, but still, I'm impressed, Suzan.
Yeah, I was early.
Yeah, great. Well, if you so you can already kind of check her out on Twitter and follow her, because she posts a lot of interesting stuff around text mining. But let's enough chatter. Let's move on to the topic. Listening to Jasper, it sounds very interesting, but my head starts to ache a little bit in terms of how many angles you actually have to this. You should have to this topic, right? So where do you start? So what is your take on that? What are relevant disciplines? Because you work in interdisciplinary conglomerates as well. What are some of the different disciplines that are relevant in this area?
Yeah, so that's a very important point that you made. So Jasper was mentioning distinguishing between opinionated articles and news articles, right? So that is one angle. And that is also, that's one thing that you can consider, is like subjectivity of news. But there are many other things, and most importantly, what is currently very actual is the rise of misinformation, right? So there are many efforts in across disciplines, actually, that is correct, to be able to distinguish true and false information on social media, and that's an incredibly difficult topic. And actually, when I was just following the first part of this talk show, everything was very positive and exciting about AI. And I was thinking, wow, my part is so depressing, because distinguishing true news and false news online is an incredibly difficult task.
Yeah.
And so you are asking about aspects that you can look at. And one of the things that we can look at, apart from the subjectivity that Jasper mentioned, is quality of content. So there, for example, we looked at the spread of news, mainstream news on social media, particularly Facebook, compared to the spread of junk news on social media. And before, when
Jasper, what is junk news? Maybe you should introduce
junk
it
news
to the
is
audience.
clickbait. I actually had an example. It was shown when Jasper was being interviewed. So on the left side, there was a news article about people who were lost on open sea. And on the right side, there was a news article about which, like, it seems similar, right? But it has this very different tone. A woman wants to put her dog down, which is very sad. There's lots of emotions there. And then they say, the reason is so ridiculous, right? So you know this kind of stuff on social media. For a long time, it was very prominent. And actually what we found was that on the Dutch Facebook, there were more user engagements with junk news, with clickbait, than there was with regular news. And so I actually have a graph on that. And we looked at that over time. We had data from 5 years. And we saw that over that 5-year time, on average, more people liked and commented and shared junk news, clickbait, than they did mainstream news. And then we used all Dutch regular news media, right? So this is the box plot of how. So you see the junk news box is a little bit higher than the mainstream news. And on the next slide, there is even a trend over time visible, where the difference even gets larger over time. So this was very worrisome, right? But also, luckily, social media companies, they have started to oppose this, right? They want to oppose this trend because, of course, they know that. And so this data ended in 2017, and I don't know what the status is now, but I have the feeling that clickbait has been seen a lot less on social media in the past year. So that's a good thing. But still, detecting misinformation is very difficult.
All right. Oh, we have an incoming Skype call. Maybe we should close it down, and we'll just tell the next speaker that we will ping him when his time is up. Yeah. So, all right. So, so it's nice because you kind of make it rather than this huge world hunger problem. You're trying to peel the onion here a little bit, and let's take one of the sub problems. Let's first estimate it. Let's see how big it is. In this case, junk news, and how do people respond to it? So, but you also worked in other areas, right? So, like politics, for example. But one of the areas, of course, which is very current at the moment is we're in the COVID situation. So we're just coming out of a very polarized discussion in U.S. politics, and now we're in. We had the whole COVID situation where there's a lot of news that's being shared. We have the vaccines coming up, where we need to see can we encourage people to actually get vaccinated, and that of course it's also causing all kinds of Twitter storms. And are you looking into that as well? How can we use these techniques in that particular context?
Definitely. So that is very worrying, right? In the Netherlands, the COVID pandemic has led to more distrust in government, in media, and in science. And I mean, that's very worrying. And this, unfortunately, has been nurtured also by conspiracy theorists. So this has been, in October, this has been published by the National Coordinator on Security and Counterterrorism in the Netherlands. And so one of the things that we try to do, apart from detecting that something is misinformation, is also we use manual labeling to say that something is misinformation, and then look at the spread of misinformation and who are the people who are spreading this. And one thing that is interesting is that social media is network data. So you can, for example, in Twitter, you can create a network of people who are communicating with each other. And in collaboration with the Dutch National Health Institute, the RIVM, we looked at discourse surrounding COVID regulations in the Netherlands. And actually their question was very difficult. They wanted to measure the support for the regulations, for example, mouth masks or lockdown regulations on social media. And that was an incredibly difficult problem. So you can imagine that, for example, so people who are doing applied text mining, they sometimes think that sentiment analysis is a very good solution to these kind of questions, right? So you can measure to some extent the sentiment of a message on social media. Is it positive or negative? But then people can be very much in favor of one regulation, like say very much in favor of the use of mouth masks, but expressing a very negative sentiment, for example, about the lack of mouth masks, right? And the government has not supplied sufficient mouth masks for healthcare employees, for example. So that can be very negative and critical and still in favor of.
Yeah. Okay, so that means ultimately that
of regulations, and this is in it's oppressing the regulations, right?
All right.
So that was challenging.
Yeah. Okay, so that's so we can see that AI can certainly play a role there too. If we don't try to solve world hunger here, and but really peel the onion and try to solve different sub problems, like you said, recognition of junk news. How does it spread? Which are real people? Which are fake? Those type of things. So breaking down the problem into smaller pieces where AI can help, and then maybe also demystifying AI here a little bit. It's not some. We heard it earlier today in the talk show. It's not some magic potion.
It's not magic. Yeah. So that is something that I always tell collaborators: is text mining is not magic, and we really need collaboration between humans and AI, machine learning. And those humans should be experts. So that's what you asked in the beginning about interdisciplinary collaborations. We always work in collaboration with social scientists, with people from the humanities. The people in Leiden University, Peter Burger and Alexander Pleiter, were collaborators on this junk news paper. They initiated this idea. So we can strengthen each other in collaborating this. Also, maybe one last thing to say, because I know I want to go to the next point, is that even though we cannot fully distinguish false news from true news, and that's very difficult, we can work to diversify what we see on the web, right? So in news recommendation, there's one project, and it's a shout out to Meerte Rover, she is here. She has started her PhD project on this topic on diversifying news recommendations. Can we just offer more diverse information to people without classifying it in true and false, right? Because you can diverse on aspects of certain topics and enlighten the different sides of each topic. So that was the final thing that I wanted to say, that we even can work on solutions even though we cannot completely recognize the problem.
Okay, that's interesting. So AI has of course, its evil role in all of this. But we, similar to what Jasper said, we can also look at how can we reverse the role, use AI to study how big is the problem anyway, and then maybe use it to solve different parts of that solution. Like maybe also as a quick shout out, because we need to wrap it up. But Jasper, I think you worked also with a student on that particular topic for the document classification. Maybe you can tell us who he was?
So sure. Sure. So the research that I spoke specifically about was done by David Bouter, and that's one of the sub projects that we're working on.
Excellent.
That was done by David.
Wow. That makes the circle round, because I know that Suzan is also one of David's supervisors. Thank you very much for this very engaging session. Again, this is a topic we could talk probably for 4 hours about. But I'd like to thank you for coming in the talk show and sharing your ideas. Thank you very much. And again, if you want to know more, yeah, you're welcome. And if you want to know more about ACE, if you want to know more about the stuff that Suzan is working on, just check the event page, where you'll find links to their web pages, to the web page of ACE, the web page of Suzan. Thank you very much.